Buenos dias, everyone. Today we will discuss about the communication modes, styles, and practices of Spain. Before we proceed to our main topic, let us first discuss a bit overview about Spain. Spain is a country located in extreme southwestern Europe. It occupies about 85% of the Iberian Peninsula, which it shares with its smaller neighbor Portugal. Spain is an amazing country. It is known for its spectacular natural beauty, rich history and culture. Amazing food, kind and cheerful people, and vibrant social life make it a unique oasis in southern Europe. And Spain is big enough and diverse enough that there is something for everyone to enjoy. Cozy white villages, spectacular medieval cities, tranquil white sand beaches, and bustling metropolitan areas. But of all the spectacular things Spain has to offer. So, what students and teachers ought to know regarding Spaniards' communication modes, styles, and practices? Now, let us know on how Spaniards communicate in verbal and nonverbal cue. Verbal communication. First is direct communication. Spaniards generally have a direct communication style. They tend to speak very openly and are comfortable showing emotion. This can give some foreigners from more reserved cultures the impression that Spaniards are very confident people, leading them to make decisions under this assumption when this may not necessarily be the case. You can expect Spaniards to offer honest answers to sincere questions. They speak clearly about their point and generally like to leave an interaction having voiced all their opinions. In return, they expect similar honesty from their conversation partner and hence may fail to read into understatements. It is important to avoid ambiguity and indirect speech. Next is common courtesy. Consider that please and thank you are not said as habitually in Spain. This is not intended to be rude. Rather, some Spanish may find it a bit excessive to express profuse gratitude and politeness throughout everyday exchanges. Silence. Consider that Spaniards can struggle to stay quiet for long durations of time. They are not particularly comfortable with silence in social situations. If conversation does fall quiet, it may be perceived to reflect badly on the relationship with the conversation partner. Informality. There are different forms of expression in Spanish that communicate varying levels of courtesy and formality. The polite form of speech involves addressing people in the formal form of you, known as usted. This was once used to mark social distance between superiors and inferiors, even within the family. However, today it is not commonly used in day-to-day conversation. Most Spaniards tend to use the informal pronoun tú in most situations. Humor. Spaniards love to joke throughout conversation. People often have many funny stories that they are prepared to tell to liven up a room. However, be aware that it is not common for people to banter by poking fun at each other in critical ways. It is best not to ingle humor too personally at the expense of those in the room. Request. The Spanish phrasing of request is generally quite direct. For example, in Castilian or Spanish, someone would commonly ask for a coffee by saying, "Would you give me a coffee?" or "Give me a coffee, please." This differs from many places in the English-speaking West where it is more common to use conditional expressions and polite forms. Example, "Could I please have a coffee?" Next, interruption and volume. It is common and acceptable for friends to interrupt and talk over one another as people get excited about conversation. In some cases, people may shout to be heard. This is not necessarily rude but indicates full engagement with the discussion. One often hears Spaniards call out and even heckle during speaking engagements and performance. This is expected to be taken in jest. So let us proceed now in nonverbal communication. First is personal space. Spaniards generally keep about half a meter of personal space from one another. Men are generally less protective of their personal space than those in the English-speaking West. Nevertheless, women are generally more comfortable with closer proximities. Physical contact. The Spanish tend to be quite tactical and expressive with physical touch. Open displays of affection between couples are common and acceptable. It is common to see people walking hand in hand or friends walking together with their arms interlocked. Among friends, people may nudge your arm, elbow, or leg to reinforce their points in conversations. Put an arm around your shoulder in camaraderie or hold both your shoulders to show deep appreciation. Next is eye contact. Direct eye contact is expected during conversation in Spain. Next is body language. Spaniards may gesticulate more in general conversation. They tend to be quite demonstrative with their expressions, using their hands to emphasize their points. Gestures. People may give one another a nonverbal cue to alert those around them if they see someone that they suspect is a thief. This involves extending a hand out and lightly touching each finger to the palm. Beckoning. The most common way to beckon another person is to hold one's hand up with the palms facing upwards and waving one's fingers towards oneself. Avoid using a single index finger alone as this can have suggestion tones. And next to discuss is the etiquette of the Spaniards. Basic etiquette. Say hello and goodbye when entering any shop or establishment. Greet people when they enter an elevator or lift. If you need to give an object to someone, pass it to them. It is rude to toss it in their direction. Tipping is common but not routinely expected. It is not considered rude to tip a small amount, such as 20 cents or 5%. You may give this small change to taxi drivers, bellhops, or even after a service. Punctuality is not highly important in Spain. People can arrive half an hour late to social function with no questions raised. If someone turns up late and apologizes, people are likely to respond with something like "no pasa nada," meaning it's not that important. And in terms of visiting, Spaniards are renowned for being welcoming and generous people. It is a common saying in Spain that "mi casa es tu casa," or "my house is your house." However, they tend to prefer to socialize at public places rather than in their homes. Therefore, try not to be offended if you are not invited to a Spaniard's house for a long time. It is not essential to bring things when visiting Spaniards. People are generally more interested in your company and conversation than what gifts you bring. However, it is common for female guests to bring a salad or dessert to a dinner, while male guests usually bring alcohol. People may not wish to give an outright announcement when the night has its end. Instead, people may talk about having la penultima, one last drink for the road, or the last but one. This shows a reluctance to leave because you are having such a good time. Lastly, make sure you say a thorough goodbye before leaving someone's house. Everyone usually embraces before departing. Sometimes goodbyes can be quite prolonged from the time that someone actually announces his or her departure. Eating. All meals of the day commence later in Spain than what people are familiar with in the English-speaking West. Lunch is the main meal of the day. It is generally eaten between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Meanwhile, dinner is rarely eaten before 9 p.m. It can begin at 10 p.m. on weekends or even later. People dine at restaurants for full meals or bars that serve tapas or pinchos, and raciones or larger portions intended for sharing. Bars tend to work out to be more expensive but have more variety. Spaniards may bring additional guests with them to lunch or dinner unless you explicitly tell them that a table has been reserved for a certain number of people. In Spain, people often choose their own table at a restaurant instead of waiting to be seated. At someone's home, wait until the host indicates everyone should take a seat before sitting. Do not start eating until the host or person who invited everyone indicates it is time to start. Keep your hands visible above the table with your wrists resting on the edge. The host gives the first toast, which is returned by the guests later in the meal. And in Spain, people toast by saying "salud" or "health." Gift giving. When visiting someone's house, bring gifts that can be shared. Be aware that flowers are not common gifts since they can't be easily shared. It is expected that parents' friends give gifts to children when it is their birthday. However, gift giving on birthday is less common among adults. Spaniards may treat all their friends to drinks instead of receiving gifts. Open gifts immediately upon receiving them so you can remark on the gift and thank the giver in person. Try and wrap gifts beautifully. Next is do's and don'ts. Do's. Take the time to engage in some small talk when meeting people. This can involve humor or inquiring into someone's family's well-being. It is rude to talk about your topic of interest without showing some thoughtfulness and consideration into people's lives. As we're in Spain, your counterpart is from and talk about your impressions of that city or region. If you have not heard of that place, show interest to learn about it. Try to stay for a few hours of talking after a meal. This can help form close bonds. However, keep in mind that Spaniards tend to stay up late to socialize. If you do not think you have the energy for a late night, simply thank them and say goodnight. Spaniards are generally well aware that they keep late hours and most will understand if you are not used to it. Speak up when you have something to say. Spaniards generally expect that people will take the initiative to interject when they feel they have something worthy to contribute to the conversation. If you wait until there is a pause in the discussion for you to make your opinion known, you are likely to be kept waiting a long time. Deliver sensitive news or criticism tactfully. The Spanish often speak with a lot of pride and confidence, giving an impression that they are very self-confident. Do not let this lead you to think they are immune to offense. Spaniards can be sensitive to comments that appear to question their dignity. Try to tolerate a higher volume of noise. Spaniards are generally used to a higher level of noise in social situations or coming from a neighboring house. Expect Spaniards to give you lots of recommendations and advice. Many people love to give their opinion on things, whether they are asked for it or not. Next is the don'ts. Avoid criticizing the Spanish culture, people, or nation. Though some Spaniards may have openly complained about how their country is being ruined by current politicians, remember that they are still very proud of their homeland and its culture. Do not bring up the topic of Catalan independence. You cannot determine what position your Spanish counterpart has on the topic, whether they are Catalonian or not. If the subject is race, it is best to simply ask questions and allow them to inform you of their perspective as opposed to sharing your own. Never say anything derogatory about a Spaniard's family, especially their mother. Do not imply the Spaniards are lazy, always late or bad at their job. This stereotype can be frustrating as the Spanish workforce is competitive and many people have to work very hard to keep their jobs. Avoid mentioning Francisco Franco and his era of power. This can initiate long debates. Do not joke about the Catholic Church or the Pope when in the company of older Spaniards. The younger generations are often quite relaxed about this kind of humor, but it can seriously offend the elderly. Do not criticize someone's favorite football team unless you want to start a debate. Similarly, don't imply that football is a bad sport. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you gathered a new idea about communication modes, practices, and styles of playing. Gracias!